What's up, everyone? This is Damien from CS1301, and today we're going to be talking about APIs. So first, what do APIs stand for, right? It's an application programming interface, and there's a high chance that this is going to be on your test, just simply knowing what an API stands for. So remember that. Now, what do APIs do? As you can see here, it allows for developers to easily share information with programmers without showing the source code they use to get that information. So I think it's best to just always go with a concrete example. So let's say we have this movie database, right? And this, all it does is essentially gives you information on movies and TV shows. So if I want to look up information on The Dark Knight, I can see when it came out, description, cast, reviews, and a lot of things, right? So this is me on the internet looking it up, right? But what if I'm a programmer and I want to create an application or a function and use this information? How would I do that? This is where the API comes in. So it essentially just hands me the information on a silver platter without showing me how this data, this information was acquired. So it's really good for both ends, right? So the developer who created the API doesn't have to show their source code, and for me, it doesn't. I don't care how they got it. I just get it, and I could use it in my program or function, right? So that's essentially what it does. It just gives programs information without showing them the source code. Again, all of these are really good test questions. Now, what's the point of JSON, right? So we have this API where it gives programmers information, but a lot of different people make different APIs, right? So how they represent this data most likely is going to be very different. So what JSON does, and again, it stands for JavaScript Object Notation, so just make sure you know that. And what that does is standardize the format of the data returned from the API in a universal way so that the computers can understand it easily. So it helps the computers as well as the programmer because it just standardizes the data so that we know what we're going to receive and how is it going to look like, right? And how do we work with an API, right? So this is a movie database API, and usually you don't need a key, sometimes you do. So an API key is just you sign up for the API and this allows you to use it, right? So I already have an account, so this is my key right here, and it's self-explanatory how to sign up for a key. You just log in and get it. So now, how do I use this API? As you can see here, the main part of this section of the course of APIs is learning how to read the documentation and maneuvering around this website. So this is the main screen of the API. Now let's just look, right? So we go down, let's see, authentication, right? So there's a lot of words that I don't know, right? Website URLs, a whole bunch of stuff. So let's just take time to read what this API is doing, right? So we have an account, we have an API key, and we have this try it out section. This try it out section is going to be really important because it basically builds your URL for you. So you could see the format on how we're going to be using this. And this section of the API just gets your account details, right? But we don't want that. We want stuff on movies, right? So let's see this. Get the primary information about a movie. So like things like the name, when it came out, and other things like that. So here we narrowed what we're looking for. We're looking for movies and we just want to get the information. So here's a lot of different things like what are responses, I don't know, right? Query strings, a lot of gibberish. But it's always just nice, especially when the API has this try it out section. Let's read, right? So we want our API key, right? And that's not my API key. This is it. And let's just give it, right? And we need a movie ID. And in the homework and things like that, we're going to be supplying movie IDs, but if you look, right, let's say I didn't know anything about computer programming and I was on this movie database, and you see this URL right here. We usually think these numbers don't mean nothing, right? They're just there. But I can bet that this is the Dark Knight's movie ID, right? So let's do that. And you see how when I changed it, 155, right? This changes. So it's building our URL to get the request. And we're going to talk about request soon. So here, boom, we send the request with this URL and we get information. So here you have that the original title is The Dark Knight, description, popularity, and things like that. And that's basically what an API does. You send a request and it gives you information on what you requested. So how do we as the programmers use this? So in the homework and just any API, so I'm using this specific example, but this can be applied to anywhere. You go to the API, you get what you're looking for. I'm looking for movies, and you see how they build their string, right? So if you look, you have this base URL, right? This looks constant, and since we're trying to get a movie, right? It's the movie here, and it seems as though what the movie ID we put in here was placed here, some question mark, right? Then we have API key equals, and it so happens to be my API key. So in our homeworks and when we're building functions, we just want to mimic this URL, right? And here we just press the button to send a request like that. How do we send a request in Python, right? So we use the request module, and this module allows us to do basically what this thing does. And not everyone has, I don't think Python automatically comes with requests, so what you would do if you have Mac and Windows is just pip install request. And we're going to see that I already have it, requirement already satisfied, so that's that. And on Windows, I know a lot of people have trouble with this because of when they install, they didn't check off this box. So if you haven't installed Python already, which you probably did, but you want to check off this box and you want to go to custom installation and check off this. So it gives us pip, and that allows us to do those pip installs, right? But let's say you already installed Python. You can go to the AMD executable thing that you installed, and you could double click it, and here it says modify. You can modify it, check this box, and hit next, and it will work. And if it doesn't work, you can always just uninstall and follow these steps. So that's usually for Windows people, it causes some trouble. But now, since we have request, right, since it's a module, we import it, import request, right? And let's see, what do we do? So request is a module, and we have a method called get, right? Request.get, and what we supply is a valid API URL, excuse me, that gives us a request an object, right? So here, what best describes what is returned from the get method and request? It's just simply an object, right? And we're going to be using JSON to format the data in the object. So here, let's get this valid URL. Oh. And let's print out R. Right, let's see what this does. Here, just saying response 200, right? This is because all get does is gives us an object that's a response. It's not giving us the data just yet. So that's where JSON comes in. We want to standardize this data. So R, this is an object, and we want to call .json on this. Okay. And when we print data, you're going to see it's going to look something very similar to this stuff. Boom, right? It's all that stuff, whereas original title, name, Dark Knight, and things like that. And just another thing to know that'll make your life really easier is this pretty print. You don't have to install it, I think it just comes with Python. From pretty print, import pretty print. So this is just a method in a module called pretty print. And what this does is makes your dictionaries look much better. So usually .json will return a dictionary. Sometimes it returns a single list with a dictionary inside. Just always print out the data and see what you're working with. And in this case, it is a dictionary, right? And here we have the keys, adult, false, things like that. ID, here we have the 155, which we placed in there, and things like that. So this is the basic recipe, I would say, on how to get information from an API. You do request.get with a valid API URL, and you can see how to build that with the documentation. Just always look at the documentation. And if it doesn't have this send request where you could build it for you, just look at they usually give you the base URL and things that you have to plug in, and that's how you do it. And we're going to see how to do that with this country's API soon. And then the next step in the recipe is just call .json. What it does is standardize the format of the data, and in this case it gave us a dictionary, and we print it out, we get that. So what if I had a function, right, and let's call it def movies, and it takes in a movie ID. Right, this is a simple function, takes in a movie ID, and I want to get the information from that movie ID. What would I do? All right, so we know we have this URL that we have to make, and let's copy this. And now 155 isn't always going to be the movie ID. They're not always going to give us the Dark Knight. So we could use string formatting or string concatenation and build our string based on what they give us. So what should go in here? Movie ID. Right? So now when I do request.get, what can go in here? URL. So let's see what happens when I do movie ID 155. Should be the same thing. Did I make any mistakes? Yes, I did. Ooh, I just got exposed. And it does the same exact thing, right? So this is just giving you an idea on how to create these functions, how to build your URLs, right? And let's just show you that it works on another thing. Avengers, Infinity War, right? So this is the ID, and let's do that. And as we can see, that it is something different. Avengers Infinity War. So this is just a little function that we can make, and you can apply this to bigger problems. Right? And let's say I just didn't want movies, I wanted TV shows, right? Get primary TV shows by ID, just try that section. So the main problem with APIs is just trying to figure out what this documentation is saying. And just another example, this is a country API where it gives you information about a country. This one does not have a try it out section, but you just look, right, the API, just search, and here what I was saying is that it gives you this basic format, and here it's usually with the brackets is the things that you have to put in. So this request.get, this URL is something like that, and here we put a code in, right? And what is that code? Again, we're gonna point you in the right direction with that problem description, but here you can read it says search by ISO 2-letter 3-letter country code, right? So what is that? The ISO has all these country codes, so the USA, right? Ours is USA, so let's put that in. And once again, this is the recipe, right? I didn't change much. Only thing I changed was the physical URL. country ID. And let's not hard code this. Let's make this apply to any country that we give. Country ID. Alright, and let's call this on USA. Country. And see, the recipe stood the same. I did request.get, I called .json, and then I have the data. So what does this give? And once again, always remind yourself what data type you're working with. So here I know this is a dictionary, right? So if I wanted to access, let's say, the name of this country, see, so data, this just reduces to a dictionary problem. After we do all that, now the question is just, can I work with dictionaries? Which we can. So let's, boom, United States of America. So that's how we use this information. The recipe stays the same. And that's basically it for APIs. The main problem is knowing how to read this documentation. It is a lot at first, but you just get the hang of it. Just see what is the base URL and see the things that you have to fill in. So if you want a list of codes, right, the basic format stays the same, codes equals, and then here you put the first one, semicolon, second one, and so on. Same thing with this API right here. The TV, you use your API key. And note, this one doesn't have an API key, this one does. It just depends on the API. Some takeaways, definitely know how to answer all of these questions. And I didn't go over this last one. Give some examples of an API. Legit could be anything that has information. You can make an API about anything. So there's a weather API. There's even a Marvel API and movie API, anything. So really just know what do they stand for, what is the point, and what do they do. Give some examples and remember this recipe. This recipe is going to stay the same. Just know how to make it apply to anything, right? So I don't want to just get USA, right? I could have just said USA in here, but I want to make it apply to any country ID. So use string formatting, string concatenation to build this URL, right? And once you have that, it reduces to a dictionary problem, and you could solve it just like that. So that's it on APIs. It's not that hard. Just remember how to do these things. And yeah.